Greetings, I am Tom Earl. On this week's episode, we talk mindset, marketing, and ethical propaganda with Curt Maly. Check it out. Greetings, I am Tom Earl, and this is my year of adventure. We know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment you are valued, you are loved, and you are appreciated just as you are. As you can see, I'm not alone. I have an amazing guest. He goes by the name of Curt Maly. What's going on, Curt?
Hey, Tom. How are you? Thanks for having me, sir.
Hey, man, I'm blessed. You know, it's one of those, I've had it a couple times where you watch someone's training so many times with their background, and then you're like actually live with them, and it's like, oh.
This is my background here is actually from Fiji. When I went to Fiji to meet with some of the same colleagues that we're in a mastermind with. So great time in Fiji. That was a really fun time.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I don't know what comes next after you say I was in Fiji other than great time.
Besides swimming with sharks, I swam with bull sharks by myself. It was just me and one other person where the fin hit me in the head. And that was there's no cage, by the way. You were just laying on your stomach as the bull shark swim over you. So that was probably the other part of the adventure that was pretty amazing.
That's awesome.
Only live once.
Yes, indeed. So why don't you share a little bit with the folks listening who are wondering, okay, who's Curt? Can you break down just a little bit? We'll go in a little deeper, but just, you know, when you're in a room, you're hanging out, people are like, hey, Curt, how are you? What do you do? Share a little bit about who Curt is on that level.
Yeah. So essentially on the work side of stuff for the last 10 plus years, I've run a lot of Facebook ads. A lot of people have known me from all around the world for running Facebook ads. The reason is I have an ad agency. I trained people for the last 8 years. We've had digital programs that we've trained, again, people all around the world. I speak on stages all around the world. I love talking about Facebook marketing. I've actually been sued by Facebook, where I was kicked off of Facebook for 888 days. Whole other story we can get into later. Essentially what ends up happening is back in 2006, I was working in corporate America and I really wanted to do something else. I'll never forget, one day I looked at the clock and it was like, I'll never forget this. It was like 4:10 in the afternoon and I did the math and I'm like, well, I can leave in another 2 hours. I have to do this for another 40 years. 40. It kind of scared me. So I kind of went on my entrepreneurial path. One thing led to another. I ended up getting into the real estate market. You know, when the real estate market was taking off, I got in right here, right when the market was about dipping down. Anyway, I was just too stupid to know because I was young, dumb, and like, you just don't know. You're just excited about an opportunity. We'll probably talk about that as well too. And essentially what ends up happening is I'm selling real estate education for $20,000 a pop, making a $10,000 commission. But then when the housing market changes and no one can get money and no one can afford a $20,000 education, I was what we call, just to be clear, I was not an NFL player, but I was in the NFL club. I had no friends left. I was having no fun left. And I had no funds left whatsoever. So I was broke as a joke. So what I had to figure out next is, what am I going to do next? I started advertising online about 10 years ago. And it really just hit me where I went over to a mutual friend's house. We were just building a relationship. His name's Mike Dillard. And I sat in his living room. And at the time I sat in his living room, we were dining on some takeout barbecue. There's like 7 people in the room. And I'll never forget this moment. And he hits this button on some promotion called the Elevation Group at the time. And it was the first time ever. This changed my life completely. And hopefully this is what I can do for some people just to broaden your horizons. I saw an individual hit a play button for a recording. They then dine with us on barbecue. We have some wine, whatever. And the person says, hey, I just made $85,000 within the first 30 minutes. Hey, I made $125,000, $250,000. This person that I was at their house and I watched this over the course of about 3.5 hours make close to $450,000 as we just sat around and kind of hung out and enjoyed ourselves. And it changed my perception for everything. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'll do anything to get in this online marketing thing. I've been doing it for 10 years. We've worked with a lot of the who's who. We've run US presidential candidates. We've run professional sports teams, people who have been on Shark Tank. We run doctors, best-selling authors, We've sold lots of different types of widgets. And the end of the day is I just love to train and help people. So like one of the reasons that I'm here is if someone has a really good message that can really help people, I can help amplify that. If you just want to sell tumbleweeds to make an extra $100 a month, I could honestly, my hands disappear. I could care less. See my hands disappear and I could really care less. So hopefully here we can add some really good value to people that they can use and put in their business and help change some lives in a really positive way. So that's my short story.
Man, so many questions just come up from just that story right there that I'm just so curious about. One is just a pick your brain question. So I'm guessing in that room, this isn't the real question. This is leading up to the real question. I'm guessing in that room was other big names in the marketing world that I might recognize. Am I incorrect in this assumption?
Which room is that? The room where this thing came about?
With
right
you,
there?
Mike Dillard.
So actually that was really interesting. So a quick little story on that is many years ago after I lost all my money in real estate is I hired a professional coach. And he reminded me that I wasn't broke at the time. I was just underfunded. Broke is a whole other different state of mind. So however things happened, coincidentally, I met Mike on a radio show. I was doing real estate. He was doing something else. And I had heard of him. And I just started asking some open conversations to build a relationship. And Mike basically just said, hey, look, I'd love to partner up. But before we do, I just want to get to know you to see if we even like each other first. So come out and hang out with my friends. And me and my business partner, we'd be driving to Mike's house to go hang out and meet his friends. And he'd cancel or something would come up. And I just didn't have an ego where like, I just wanted to hang out with him. I didn't care that he canceled. Sometimes that happens, whatever. Well, on the fifth night that he ended up saying, hey, Curt, come over. We're like, yeah, sure. He's probably going to cancel again. Whatever. It's fine. Changed my life forever. So there were 3 people in that room that I've always read about and heard about. And there were 2 people in that room I had never met before that have now become lifelong friends. And yeah, now that I look back on it, those are some industry leaders that have just unequivocally changed my life in big ways and thousands of other people's actually.
So then here's the follow-up question I was building up to. So when I was in college, I heard Saul Williams. So he's a famous spoken word artist and musician. So he was sharing to us, hey, when I was coming up with 2 other artists. And we just all felt like, as we were just writing songs together, that we were all going to be famous. And he's like, and then the 2 friends I'm talking about ended up being Talib Kweli and Mos Def. So it's like, oh my God, these 3 people were hanging out, become industry leaders. And I've heard that pattern repeated. Now I see with you, where you were saying with a lot of these people you had on your stay-at-home summit, that you all kind of started to come up in the same time, and now you're industry leaders. And so I'm wondering if you just have any reflections upon that, maybe for folks right now who are in masterminds together or building together, why that is that people just feel that, hey, this group of people, we're know-nothings now, or people don't know of us now, but if we just keep going at this, we're going to become something special. Or how come that phenomenon seems to repeat?
Well, it's interesting because I ask a lot of people this, especially if they're in network marketing. Like network marketing is one of my favorite things for people to get involved in when they're starting out as an entrepreneur. And the reason is because there's a business structure, there's a community, there's systems, there's processes, there's leaders. So many times as an entrepreneur, people start out and they're literally like, well, what do I do next? Well, you're an entrepreneur. You're going to figure that out on your own, right? Well, network marketing is a perfect example of this. So just imagine that we are in a network marketing company. Just imagine you and I start an ABC network marketing, right? We got our business pack. We're all excited. And we show up to that very first meeting. And we're just excited as all the first people there anyway. So we hand over a credit card and we're excited. Now, as soon as we hand over a credit card, important things are going to start happening, okay? Our family and friends are going to tell us we're stupid. We don't know what we're doing. We signed up for a pyramid scheme. So now you have all these self-doubters. And then you have these stories that go on in your head that's like, I'm not good enough. My mom didn't hug me. My dad didn't love me. My uncle didn't buy me a pony. And then some people will continue to go forward and some people won't. So what happens is let's just say me and you are in this network marketing company and 6 months down the road, we go to another meeting. Half the people are different. They're just gone. We're like, I don't know why. We have the same training. We're with the same people. We're doing the same thing. And now all of a sudden what happens is just imagine 8 months later, we go to a national convention we're in this national convention and you and I are sitting in the back row looking at on stage. We're like, oh my goodness, all these people make so much money. They do so many. I would love to be on stage. Well, it's what I've spoke for a lot of network marketing companies. That's why I'm bringing up this analogy. And so many people, what I see is on the stage, look back 4 years later, they've come to the events over the last 4 years. They've applied themselves the 4 years. They've bumped into people on stage to become friends with those people. Then they're invited to give a small little talk, and they're in that back room to start meeting those people. And so many times people are like, man, you're so lucky. No, I just consistently showed up to the exact same place. I had the exact same tools that you did. And because I was around, and this is probably the most important thing that I learned, I actually learned this from the Mormon faith, the Mormon religion, which is serve people unconditionally before you ask for anything. So I started to show up to these networking events, no joke. And I'm like, can I set out the chairs? Why would you do that? Because you look like an authority if you're setting out the chairs. So to wrap this whole thing up, as I bring it into network marketing, you show up 4 or 5 years later to these network marketing national events. There's a very small percentage of people that are just new that always come on in. Well, there's a small percentage of people that actually stick with it. The people who've stuck with it for 4 years are the people who are on stage because they put in the time, they built the relationship. Very rarely do I meet someone who's been in that company or a network marketing company for 5 or 6 years, and they're still sitting at the back of the room not making any money because they just don't have the right team or solution. So it's consistency and surrounding yourself with the right people. Then you just all show up. That's pretty much the big deal of it.
So take me back then to, you had left your corporate job, you had invested in this real estate, and then it all fell underneath you. Probably, I'm guessing, with the collective panic of society. So it wasn't just something you were going for, like all of society was telling you, loss,
Right.
negativity,
Right.
scarcity. How did you then, and any other time, you can kind of fast forward if you want to, like you build this up and you lose it because Facebook takes it away. How do you not let that destroy you or go into your shell or become jaded? How do you find the courage to turn your biggest loss into, your hero story?
Well, easy. This is actually quite easy. So a lot of people define themselves in moments of life. So what happens is, kind of rewind this a little bit. Every single morning, I haven't done this in a while since quarantine, but every single morning, essentially, I'd go for a walk or a bike ride, and I'd listen to the same kind of mantras over and over to increase and improve my language and to hear these same and powerful words over and over. And in one of the mantras, it came down to, I don't remember the exact words, but this is pretty close. It says, loss of employment, divorce, or even death does not have an emotion tied around the event itself. It's the story we choose to tell ourselves that happened around that event. The death itself, the divorce, the money loss, the job loss, the event itself has no emotion. It's how we choose to tell ourselves the story and how we respond to that emotion. And I'd listen to this on a regular basis. So I get to write my own story. So what ends up happening is when the real estate market collapses, for example, I just needed to try to figure out how to eat. I didn't have money in savings, so I had to figure out something. I couldn't sit there and cry about it. Some people turn into alcoholics. Some people turn into religion. Some people turn into drugs. Some people try to find their why. And I literally look at people and I'm like, I have to eat. I don't have a government check. No one's sending me anything. I'm not getting any help. No one's going to loan me any money. So unless I figure it out, I can sit here and tell myself, oh, woe is me. So if you're struggling, go out and serve, right? Go out and find some places where you can volunteer, meet some other people, get some other ideas. But as I was rebuilding things, I surrounded myself with different people. So let's fast forward. Stuck at Home Online Summit. We have one of our biggest events in our online marketing world called Traffic and Conversion by Digital Marketer, right? It's out in San Diego. 10,000 people show up to it. So all of a sudden, it was canceled. Everything in March was canceled. So I remembered back to that time when the real estate market collapsed. And actually, to be very open with you, I got really excited. Lots of people got really scared. Here's why. Let's say, Tom, for instance, that you have a job. Let's just say that you are working at this job. And let's just say that you are an oil engineer, just because it works with here in Texas, whatever. You're an oil engineer. Well, all of a sudden, the market changes. You're out of a job. You don't have anything else to do. So a lot of people do is they just sit there and they panic and they wonder, oh my goodness, what happened now? And it's in this great book called Who Moved My Cheese, which if you haven't read it yet, it's an amazing business book. You can read it in 20 minutes. It is literally two mice. They go find this pile of cheese. One day the pile of cheese is gone. So they come back to the same pile and it's gone. One mouse says to the other mouse, where's the cheese? One of them's like, well, I'm just going to stick here because it's going to show up tomorrow, meaning nothing's going to change. Yeah, go ahead and stick here. There's no cheese. You're going to starve to death. I'm going to go somewhere else. That's the entire fable of the whole book right there. So I had to eat when the market really changed. So I got excited when this market changed. And here's why. I give you a couple of tips if you're watching this. Number one, you're not the only person who lost your job. Like Tom, if you were to lose your job in the oil field, man, that would suck if you're all by yourself. Because let's just say, and you don't, but I'm just saying, you were drinking one night, you got fired. That would really suck. That doesn't happen. But now that this economy is happening to everyone, did you know 40% of people in the United States did not pay rent in April? So if you can't pay rent, they can't actually kick you out right now, cannot evict you because everyone's in the same boat. Everyone. So this gives you more opportunity, right? It's not like you're broken out of work. Everyone's broken out of work. Now you get to decide, since everyone's at home, well, here's a tip for you. I started calling a bunch of my friends. You had mentioned the summit. It was called the Stuck at Home Online Summit. As soon as travel was canceled, I automatically picked up the phone because I knew everyone was stuck. No one was going to travel. No one says no to an interview. And I wanted to interview 30 of our top industry people. And as I started to interview those 30, the word got out. It ended up being 65 people. But what ended up happening is this. I interviewed 65 people on this exact subject. You can do the same thing as well. Hey, look, there are people here that are new, brand new beginners. They would like some ideas about internet marketing. They're intermediate or they're expert, where they just want to dive in deeper. Hey, industry expert, what are you doing right now as the economy's changing? What advice do you have for that newbie, intermediate? And if someone's an expert, what would you be doing to position yourself in the economy? Now I had content that everyone wanted to watch, because while everyone's standing still wondering, well, the cheese is going to show up here someday, I delivered a bunch of content, which very truthfully, and then we'll go to the next question, which is, it was kind of selfish because I learned so much from those 65 people. It's made me almost an extra $100,000 in my business over the last 4 months. So because I wanted to do interviews, because I just wanted to figure out what everyone's doing as the economy was changing, I found some brilliant ideas, got brilliant insight, sold those interviews, ended up making an extra $100,000 because of what a couple of people said. So there's a full circle moment for you.
I love that. Before we start to jump into some tactical things with business, I always like to come back to what we're circling around, which is mindset. And
yes, important.
A lot of what you're talking about reminds me where I really feel like entrepreneurship is a spiritual journey, because
absolutely,
you can't get to the next thing if you can't overcome what's going on inside.
Absolutely.
So, when did that click for you? Because with you saying when the economy crashed, automatically your mind said, "Oh, opportunity." So how did you cultivate that growth mindset where you?
Great question. Great question.
Rather than go ahead.
So essentially, what happened is everybody. Well, I shouldn't say everybody. Every entrepreneur has their own ups and downs. There's not one entrepreneur that just skyrocketed unless family gave money or whatever. So with me is, a lot of business owners, they'll have a great success and then something happens. It happens all the time when you study these biographies. And essentially what ends up happening is this. I have this ad agency downtown Austin. It's growing to 14, 15 different people. Our revenues are well over $200,000 a month at this time. And everyone knows who we are, and we are just crushing it. Well, all of a sudden, this is where I receive a cease and desist from Facebook that basically says we were working with someone internally that they didn't appreciate the relationship, but they didn't have to check any facts or any of that other stuff. So the hard thing within my situation was, and this is just my story, is if you get a speeding ticket for driving fast, you get a lawyer, you go to court, there's case precedent. With this, there's no case precedent. Facebook owns the island. They can do whatever they want. There's nothing I can argue with unless I want to spend a bunch of money arguing over. There's no court cases. So I'd be the first. That's pretty expensive endeavor. So what ends up happening is I'm thinking I can fight this. And one of my entrepreneur friends flew in from Boulder, surrounded me with about 15 other entrepreneur friends. We went out to the bars that night here in Austin, and oh my God, we had fun. But as we're all sitting around, I'll never forget this. Someone said, "Hey, Curt, you have a pretty good attitude," since this is the second time that it had happened to me, right? Meaning I lost my money in real estate and I was getting sued by Facebook. And they're like, "Hey, Curt, it doesn't seem like it really bothers you much." And I'm like, "Well, it bothers me, but I've realized I've come to the moment that it's done and over and I got to do something different. Sometimes it takes people days, weeks, or months to get there." And the second thing that was the best thing for me ever, I'm surrounded by 15 other entrepreneurs. Not one of them has hit it out of the park easily. Literally, one guy was sued by Oprah, who was sitting right next to me. This person was sued by Dr. Oz. This person had a $50 million company that their business partner stole a bunch of money. This person had, and now all of a sudden my problems were just part of the story that I decided to tell myself in my own head. None of my entrepreneur friends are going to be like, "Yeah, dude, you got sued. You go do something about it." Like, what are you going to do? Drink your beer for the next 6 months and cry about it? Like, you're not going to cry to us. And it really made me really understand that every entrepreneur goes through a journey like this. It's the stories that we decide to tell our own head. And I can wait and sit on the sidelines as long as I want, or I can just dust myself off, jump right back in. And it's the story I created in my own head. And I live in a great place that overlooks the city, and we have some great times now. And it's not always easy, but it's the stories that we decide to tell ourselves every single day for the decisions that we make. It's very important.
So as we kind of wrap up this mindset part of this interview, one thing you said before we jumped in was you didn't want people to just be inspired. You wanted them to take action. So right now, I'm sure people are feeling inspired unless were asleep during all the hero's journey stuff you just shared with us. So if they're like, "I'm with you, I want that, but how do I get that? How do I get that mindset you had where my company the button can be turned off overnight?" That's so many ad agencies' worst fear is that I build up an agency and Facebook says you're done. And now what am I supposed to do? It happened to you, but you still came back. How would you say action steps for folks to get that kind of mindset?
Great question. It all comes down to the stories that we decide to choose to tell ourselves in between our own two ears. That's the biggest thing, right? Like, we're already good enough. It's already fine. We're not bad people. But whatever stories we just want to tell each other over and over. So we get to decide when we want to wallow in our own stuff or just move forward. So there was a brain scientist that I worked with. This actually saved my life. I was diving out in, where was I at? I was in the Bahamas. And I've dove lots of times before. I'm not certified. At the time I wasn't. And I ran out of oxygen. I'm literally down on the ocean floor. I've run out of oxygen. There's about 4 things that I need to do to save my life. I was perfectly calm, did my 4 things, got to the top. Later, as one of the instructors handed me the photo, like he literally took a photo of the time where I exactly ran out of air. However, he didn't know I was running out of air at the time. And he's like, "Man, Curt, I got to tell you, like, I've seen this happen twice. You're the second time. First time was a Russian, crazy, freaked out underwater, freaked out. And we had to bring him back up, and it's horrible. Almost killed him. But yeah, because he freaked out. I learned something from a brain scientist that I apply all the time to get through my emotions. And now as soon as I say this, you're going to know that I do this all the time, especially because you watch my training videos. I say the word specifically. Tom, specifically, what are we talking about? It's going to move your brain from emotion to logic. So as you're talking to your wife, "Hey, can you do me a favor and put down the baby? I really didn't like it when you did blah, 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 blah." And sometimes people would just argue about nothing. Honey, specifically, brain automatically switches over to exactly what she wants you to do. So one of the sayings that I have is, if people can remember this, kind of put out like, "Hey, we're rocking Texas Longhorns," right? Turn it to the side. And if people do this with me, and if you're just listening to an audio, I'll kind of explain it, but you kind of, put out like the Longhorn symbol if you're chanting. And basically I touch my index finger, and this is I. So I'm going to give you an acronym. This is I, this middle knuckle is B, and this pinky is R. IBR. Intention, behavior, result. So what happens is when something emotional happens or a story happens, you start to think, okay, what was my intent? So let's just say Tom and I are doing an interview. I am 7 minutes late and Tom yells at me. Well, I was 7 minutes late, but Tom didn't yell at me, but whatever. So what's going to happen is I can either sit there and be like, man, why did Tom treat me like this? I can't believe he did this. Why did he do this? Why do interview people do this? Why do they? And there's all these open loops that just causes stress, anxiety, however you want to handle it. If you want to decrease all of that and move forward, it's literally comes down to this. What was my intention with Tom today? Well, it was to have a great interview. What was my behavior? Well, my behavior was I showed up 7 minutes late, but we did jump into it right away. Well, what was the result? Well, the result overall wasn't too bad. What would I do different next time? Because your brain is logically moving in what's the next story to create for myself. Well, next time I was just running just a little late. I got to make sure that I just wrap up the thing I was doing before. And now there's no guilt. There's no shame. There's no what specifically happened. So again, if you're in a discussion with your wife because, I don't know, someone didn't wake up the baby or whatever, you step back and literally, hey, baby, I'm going to go through this real quick. What was my intention? All I wanted to do was just to hold the baby. I didn't even wake it up. My behavior was I didn't listen to you and you were right. And the overall result is I'm sorry, we caused an argument. Next time what I do is I'll be a little more careful and I'll listen to you a little bit more. All of a sudden, the other person feels heard, doesn't feel like there's an argument, and there's no emotion, so you can move forward. So when you get emotional, specifically, what are the next steps? And remember, intention, behavior, result, and that will logically help you process through the emotions to come out the other side and take some action quickly.
Boom, y'all. Boom. Curt, come and see you live.
Save my life. Use it all the time.
I'd like to do a little plug for you too. One of the people you interviewed, I'm slipping on her name, but her program's Nevertheless.
Oh, absolutely. Shelby Larson. Shelby's a very great friend of mine.
Yeah. So I want to just shout out her program, Nevertheless. Do you still have the, what is it, belt.live/nevertheless? Is that still going?
So one of the things we can talk about this just for some tips for some people, and I'll give out that link too. It is the belt.live/nevertheless, and I'll explain this. So a couple of quick tips here because we talk about a summit. So just to bring everybody on the same page. One of the things is if you would like to build your influence and you'd like to get to know people more, do an interview like this. I don't have a whole lot of time these days. I'm not traveling all these days. Tom and I would never have a long conversation like this unless we did business together or unless we did an interview like this. A lot of people will not say no to an interview. Most people won't even ask you who your audience is, how big your audience, who's going to see it. So 9 out of 10 times you can call industry leaders and you can say, hey, by the way, my name is, I would like to record a Zoom interview with you. You don't have to send this to your list. You don't have to do anything. I just want to record the interview with you. And I'm going to put 5 or 10 interviews together. And I'm going to give the interviews away, or I'm going to sell the interviews or whatever. Most people just want to be interviewed. They don't even have to sell stuff. So what I wanted to do is when the economy changed, well, I'm just going to start interviewing a bunch of my friends that are very diversified in their businesses. And I'm going to find out, well, what are they doing? And again, these people gave me different ideas. So what I did is I hosted a summit and I said, hey, look, here's a problem stuck at home. I'm going to give people the opportunity to learn how to pivot and do something new, or again, intermediate users to fill in some bullet points or to fill in some learnings, and experts to dive deeper. So you may be looking at an industry right now and maybe you're just getting started, and let's just say that you are mission driven, and let's just say that you have, let's just say that you have a mission in your local community that you're really passionate about. Well, great. You can interview any of the community leaders that involved with that. Like, you can literally say, I started an association. I started a group. I'm starting a panel. Interview these people. It's one way to get to know them. It's another way than when Tom starts to run the interview like this one here, or when you set up these interviews and you tell people about these interviews, there's 3 major things that are going to happen. And these are the big kind of takeaways I want to give you. Number 1, Tom, you remember Shelby from Nevertheless. It's something that you remembered, and we just gave out that link. So what's happening is I can talk to entrepreneurs, and if all of a sudden I remember, oh, so-and-so, Tom Breeze said something really interesting in YouTube, go watch this video. It's a way for me to offer free support and help for people, but it aligns me with the expert next to me, right? So I have a warehouse of videos that I can help people with. The next thing is I'm with a bunch of experts, right? my face is being seen with a bunch of experts. And honestly, if I ask some good questions, Tom, you've been asking some really good questions, you're starting to build that relationship that is usually built in the back rooms, behind the stage. How do you get to know these people overall? And then the other thing is the third thing is these things run forever as long as I want. So I want to interview people about a time and place where it really matters that they can help people. I want to give people a little platform, but I'm going to reposition that content on a very regular basis. No one will say no to an interview. Ask really good questions. Tom, you're asking some really great questions here. And then package them up to run them as ads, to run it as content. But instead of you writing 20 blogs all about yourself or your own experience, interview 20 different experts or people on the street or whatever. It can make some really amazing content and really change your life.
That's why I always tell people, I'm like, just start a podcast for its ability to give you leverage to get time with people who normally wouldn't give you time. You know what I mean? Like exactly what you said. So I really appreciate
and like out of all the people that you've asked, right? You don't have to name any names, but out of all the people you've asked, how many times have you gotten told no for an interview?
I'm going to say quite a few, or no response, but more likely than not, yeses.
So remember, there's a difference between reply and respond, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't necessarily respond. They didn't necessarily reply to you and say that they would do it or they wouldn't do it. They just responded, but they just didn't do anything. But what happens is it's the same thing as it grows more and more, you just keep on asking more and more, and it starts to snowball. So you get some no's at first. But especially if you work on very hot topics, you're good.
And I just want to point out that was a little bit of like some coaching that Curt did there, because I don't know if y'all heard, but I was telling a story of, they didn't respond. It probably means they don't want to. They don't like me. There might have, I think there's a little bit of that in there that I didn't realize. But it's like they may not have seen it. There could have been a million reasons. So I appreciate that, Curt. That was awesome.
Well, I'll say I'll never forget this. This is a great story for anybody listening to this. So there's two friends of mine that we meet up at their house. Name's Justin Brooks and Ron Lynch. Well, Justin's a person who sells a bunch of ad trainings just like I do. And Justin's talking about this amazing program that he has. Now, Justin's the creator. He's also customer service, but you really shouldn't do both. Because as the creator, you're like, hey, look at my pretty pictures, right? But as customer service, you have to hear people complain about your pretty pictures all day long. It's kind of bad. So what happens is Justin's selling this program, and Justin's telling our group how he shut down the entire program. And I'll never forget this. My friend Ron, he's famous for the infomercials he makes, like the George Foreman grill. He's helped do that one. So anyway, he has my friend Ron has Justin put out his arm, and so Justin puts out his arm, and Ron starts rubbing his arm like that. So if you can't see this, if you listen to audio, it's just me rubbing my finger just right on top of my arm. Now, Tom, if you were standing next to me, I would rub my finger on your arm very politely, very nicely. Now, I know you're a married man, right? It's just whatever people believe in, totally cool. And it's going to feel comfortable. Some people, it's going to feel weird because it feels nice and it feels weird, but you have a wife, but hang on, but it's it. So people get really confused with this whole thing, right? It's just something nice. And then my friend Ron scratches Justin, and Justin goes, oh my God. And Ron goes, that's my point. Is you've had different people rub you the entire time, telling you how much they like you. You thought it was uncomfortable and weird. They just wanted to say that they liked you. You got one complaint, maybe two, and you shut down an entire business because you thought this was more weird than literally that scratch. And you made an entire business decision because of two people. So just to be very open with everyone listening, since I kind of put you on the spot, how many people have emailed you back, said that absolutely not, I will not be on your podcast?
No, everybody's been very polite. They're like, it's not a good fit. I don't have enough time, but nobody's been like, you terrible human being, you piece of shit.
Right. So you just, some will, some won't. So what? Next. And you just move on down the line. No one remembers the no's. Nobody cares about that. But you get some yeses and you keep on just snowballing it. And that's it. One of these things I'm going to show you here real quick that I just absolutely love to show people is I'm actually going to remove the background that you see right here. So what hangs behind me is obviously Einstein. I have had this as a logo for my brands and my products for a really long time. Einstein is just an amazing individual for me, for the way that he thinks, the way that he talks, the things that he helped our world really come to. But there's a story that he had for his son. And essentially what happens is his son gets out of a relationship and he comes to Einstein because his son is just, distraught and depressed. And what am I going to do? And basically Einstein looks at his son, and the way the story goes is Einstein says, life is like a bicycle. If you stop pedaling, you're going to fall off. Don't stop pedaling. Get back on the bike. Hurry up. Let's get going. Come on. Right? You can feel sorry for yourself for a day or two, no matter what situation you have, but you got to keep moving. No matter what, you have to keep moving. And it's the people like right now who are sitting literally in their house being like, this is what I don't understand. This is not my mindset. I just don't understand. Oh my God, it's been 4 months. What am I going to do? It's been 4 months. What the hell have you done? Everyone knows the economy's changing. So you're either like those mice, either you're sitting there being like, someday, like my girlfriend, for example, she works at a gym. The gym's been closed for 4 months. It's gone through bankruptcy. They don't even have personal trainers anymore. So she doesn't have hopes, but if she had hopes and dreams of, I just want to be a trainer for the rest of my life. What do? Sit around and cry about it for a while? You're at home. This is a perfect time to listen to content, improve yourself a little bit, and don't stay stagnant. You got to keep moving forward because the whole world is changing, and you can decide if you want to change with it or not. It's completely up to you.
I mean, this, you and I sat down to talk about you're an expert at marketing. I consider myself to be pretty great at marketing. We're like, let's talk about marketing. And for the past hour, we've been talking about mindset because it's the key. It's
a huge part of it. It really is. Well, because it helps. Because at the end of the day, it helps out people with all levels. So one of the things I want to make clear is I speak on lots of different stages, and I ask this question all the time: what's more important, motivation or content? And what happens is if you give too much content, you overwhelm people, and they don't know what to do next or where to get started. If we only talk about motivation, people are going to run around excited, but they don't know what to do. So some action steps we've talked about so far, just to be clear, is intention, behavior, result. Right? Intention, behavior, result. How do we move that logic? The word specifically, when you're in an argument, ask someone specifically, what are you looking for? We've also talked about doing the summit, setting up interviews, and even kind of a selfish reason. Even talked about how to structure the interviews, right? What's going on right now? How can you help someone who's just starting out, someone who's intermediate, or someone who's an expert who wants to dive in a little bit deeper? So hopefully this gives people some inspiration, some ideas, and some ways to take some action on things.
Agreed. Let's dive into a couple of the marketing tips. Can you go a little bit longer?
Absolutely.
So when you were talking about podcasting and a couple of other things, one theme that I love about you and the belt method, and I'll let you talk about the belt method here in a sec, but I just want to set it up, is I'm a huge believer in the power of relationships. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be the backbone of your marketing and even your hat, which you can talk about with folks. So talk to us about about the belt method and how relationships and building relationships and trust is a part of it for you, and maybe even where that aha came from.
Yeah, I think what ends up happening is a lot of people have, a friend of mine, Jesse Elder, says this. A lot of people spend time on their own shiny, well, you can use another word, but I'll just call it stuff, right? And I want you to imagine that other word, not just the word stuff, but since it's a family show, please imagine the other word. What happens is they get a product and they're like, oh, my shiny stuff. And what happens is they get so excited about their shiny stuff that they're just, oh, you want to see my shiny stuff? Did you want to buy my shiny stuff? Hey, do you like my shiny stuff? Did you still want to buy my stuff? You should definitely buy my stuff. And it's like, I don't even know what your stuff is. So many people get so excited about their own stuff, they forget this one important statement. I learned this from a guy named Mark Hoverson. He's no longer with us. He basically said this: your marketing will sell your product, and your product will keep people from refunding. So I could have the world's perfect product right here, but unless someone swipes their credit card, they'll never know how good this is. So it's my responsibility to, now I'm going to make this up. This is not true, but I'm going to make this up. Let's just say this pill cures cancer right here. Now, if a cancer patient does not put this pill in their mouth, can't help them. So if I literally don't tell them a story and say, take this pill, it's going to help. If they don't trust me, They're not going to take it. Now, if I want to be scientific about my shiny stuff, I'm going to list my 45 different things. Tom, you might have cancer, but here are 45 things will help you. You're not a doctor. What are the 40? You don't even know what the 45 things are. You don't care about any of that stuff. Now, let's go with the word doctor. That's a lot of propaganda right there, right? So let's just talk about the word doctor for a second. Now, a doctor is going to wear a white coat. They're going to come in, they're going to examine you, and for the most part, they're going to get instant trust. Most doctors, physicians, have less than 10 hours of nutritional training. 10. Where does 90% of all of our disease come from? What we eat. So instantly, you walk into a doctor to get advice, and they're going to give you advice on how to fix something, but they don't tell you the cause. They just tell you how to address it, and you instantly believe them not because you saw their plaque, not because you saw their education. You don't even know where they went to school. You don't even know what grades they got. But they walked into an office with a coat on, with a stethoscope. I can't even say the word stethoscope, and they gave you direct instructions. So you are buying the belief based on your trust factor of the person standing in front of you. So if the person standing in front of me was a doctor and they said, hey, Curt, looks like you have cancer. Look, I've been a doctor for 20 years. There's this thing that I have here. Man, I've seen so many other people take this. And let me tell you, as a doctor, here's what I've figured out. I want you to take this. I think this is going to make a big difference for you. I don't know anything about the 15 different ingredients. I don't know anything about all the shiny stuff. All I know is that I am in need right now. And there's this person that I have built a relationship with because of social cues, the white lab coat, the stethoscope, that kind of stuff, right? I don't really know him personally. We've met like 3 times. So it becomes more powerful. We helped somebody with a U.S. president that was running for U.S. president. I really started to dive deep into propaganda. Now, propaganda has a negative connotation that it's basically a way to seduce the public into doing things that are negative. Well, I'll tell a story about this real quick about propaganda, but we believe stuff in our society today because we've been fed the words. So this is going to be controversial, but I'll say it for a second. Assault rifles, no such thing. Nope. The AR is a type of rifle. Someone on Capitol Hill said they're assault rifles. There's no such thing as assault rifles. It's a word that's made up for fear that helps to label something as fearful so people stay away from it. So we start thinking, wait a minute, there are made up words that people have given us that make us believe. Give you one other example, and then we'll go to the marketing part of it. You ever heard of Betty Crocker, right? Betty Crocker cooks this brownie. Many people cook Betty Crocker brownies. It's very simple. It's water, it's powder, it's an egg. You mix it together, you put it in the oven. Not that hard. Well, back in the 40s, what ends up happening is, the 30s. It was late 30s, early 40s, during the war. Betty Crocker, an actual person, makes this powder and water cake. Doesn't sell. It's powder and water to make a cake. Husbands aren't home, wives can take care of it. So they end up paying this consultant a whole bunch of money, and the story goes the consultant waits for 6 months, doesn't get back to him. Finally, the Betty Crocker organization's like, come on, like, what's the deal? And the guy's like, all right, here's the deal. Add an egg. And the Betty Crocker people are like, this doesn't require an egg. It's powder and water. And the guy's like, add an egg. What they found out was, this is the belief system of wives. We're talking about belief system, not my shiny product of cake mix. The belief system was, my husband's been off to war. My husband works really hard. I want to cook them a good meal. Water and powder in the oven is not a good meal for my husband. But if I add an egg and mix it, I feel like I'm baking. And now that I'm doing something, Betty Crocker became a $1 billion organization. So based on the belief, not the actual product itself, it revolutionized the way people do it. So a president got elected this way, all presidential stuff set aside. Actually, I'll say this, I'll make this really easy. One last thing on propaganda. When I speak on stage, I will show a picture of Trump with a crown on his head that says King Trump. And what I literally say is, I'm going to show you a picture. You know what? We'll just figure this out. And then I don't say anything for a full minute. I don't care about the political beliefs because I understand how the back stuff works. What happens is for a minute, people will gasp. I've had people leave the room. I've had people audibly call out some things. I've had people cheer. And after a minute, I literally say, just imagine this is just a picture. Imagine when someone looks at your brand, they instantly get emotionally involved, that audibly they speak something out, they talk to their neighbor, or they leave. So I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on. If you're angry, you are 100% bought into the machine, because only angry people vote. So if we're going to cause emotion to get people to move and change their lives, I'm going to tie a lot of emotion around you getting to know me. I'm going to build a lot of emotion with my product, because when it comes time to taking the product's great. But if I build this emotional toll with you, I will completely outspend other marketers. I will outgrow other marketers, because I have the biggest growth rate. The reason is because people are building a relationship with me and my brand. So even like some brands like Coca-Cola, even when they make a mistake and they change their formula, they have a good enough following, they just make an adjustment, they're not out of business. Very big difference in marketing.
So how do you, because a lot of folks, that are listening right now, they have organizations or movements that are really important to them, movements that are working to end racism or sexism or Islamophobia. And so these type of relationships, and for the folks who are listening and can't see, Curt's hat says, "My propaganda is strong." So
Yeah.
getting that consistently message out there in a way that does impact people to make change. How is that in terms of Facebook ads different than like all of your money going to, hey, here's my free download into my email sequence, maybe one or two carts closing ads? Like what about the belt method is different than that?
So a couple of things, and then I'll go into the belt method. So for example, like what you're doing here on a podcast, I was interviewing some podcast stars on my Stuck at Home Summit. I didn't know this. Once someone listens to a podcast, there's an 88% completion rate. 88. And it's like, you mean for an hour, someone's going to be listening into your ear? Like that's powerful. So if you keep doing these over and over and over, you're building a relationship with people literally in their head. They listen to one podcast after the other. Well, you can apply that exact same thing over on Facebook. So many people are running ads that say, hey, buy this, and they'll click on an ad. And what happens is it may cost $1 to go to the website to find out about this. I can record a 30-minute interview talking about the benefits of how amazing this is with someone who's used this, and someone will watch the 20 or 30-minute long interview for less than $1. So for me, it becomes simple math and facts, which is this. I remember where I used to sell, like I mentioned earlier, real estate education for $20,000, right? We would bring people into a hotel ballroom, right? Just imagine there's 100 people there, and we would make a speech. Well, when I think about that, and I'm like, okay, if I have, let's just say $20 to spend, do I want 20 people to click to my website? The average person is going to stand there for 30 seconds. So again, let's go back to my hotel room days. Are we going to have people for $1 walk in, look at me for 30 seconds and leave? Or would I rather pay for that $1 to have people sit inside that hotel room and listen to me for 30 minutes? Of course, listen to me. That's how I'm going to build a rapport. So a lot of the times when I hear about activism and some of the other things that you're talking about, what I would be doing is interviewing people on Facebook Lives, and 99% of the people who watch your Facebook Lives will actually run the replay. It's kind of like a podcast. So if you do Facebook Lives on a regular basis that are 10, 15, 20 minutes long, we run those as ads. They're video view ads, to get specific, because many times, most of the time, it's cheaper for someone to build a rapport and watch this entire interview than it is just to go to your website. So for me, I have a couple of interviews like this that people will see. This is exactly, and I'll explain the belt method. People will literally be scrolling through their news feed, find a video interview like this that I've done, watch it for 20 minutes for whatever reason they say. Facebook knows exactly who to find and do this. And then they're like, well, Curt, I don't know how, but I found this one video. And then I saw this other testimonial. And then I saw you were on this podcast with Tom. And then you were on this podcast with Mike Diller. Then I didn't even realize that you offer this program called The Belt. See, I built a relationship with them first, just like we would in the good old days before the interwebs. And before I even started talking about my shiny stuff. They don't even know I have shiny stuff at first. I'm building that relationship. So this thing right here, and I have a link to free training that Tom has that I'll give you as well. So this right here is a belt, and you'll hear me talk a lot about the belt method. Tom's brought it up. And essentially what it is this, is back in February 2019, I flew to Baltimore, and there were 35 ad buyers that all flew to Baltimore. We all sat around a table. There were 35 to 40 other people watching us, and we all kind of debated on some of the best ad strategies. And it was a 2-day event. And basically what happened was the leader of that event said, whoever came out with the best strategy that's predictable, duplicatable, voted on by your peers, then they'd win the belt. This is people who are running Ty Lopez's ads, people who run ClickFunnels ads. This is people who run Purple Mattress ads. So you can obviously tell that I have a belt that's been all around the world with me now. And essentially what the acronym is this. It's really quite simple, right? Easy Belt acronym. We made this into, actually, Tom, what I realized, by the way, one of the fun things that you can do with, Zoom, is take a screenshot of any kind of presentation that you want to do, and instantly we have a way to be like the weatherman, right? Seriously, that goes just like this. So I'm going to try to do this backwards, right? Right there, if my finger doesn't hide, right there, belief. See, what we do is we just take a method because it's fun. So we're going to use labeling, that's propaganda. We're going to use labeling to explain difficult processes we've done over the last 10 years to make them really easy. So the first thing that I'm going to do when we start selling something, and again, I'll give you access to free training in a minute, we are going to, if I get this right, we're going to go right here to belief. So I want to build a belief with you. That's what Tom and I are doing. We're not selling anything, buy our shiny stuff. We're just building a rapport because I want to build a relationship with you. So we're going to create videos that we just start to build that belief, right? Do we believe in this activism that you're talking about? Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is eventually get my finger down, right? Whereas right here, engage. So once someone's seen one of our videos, now they're going to just engage with us. They're going to see blog posts. They're going to see other videos. They'll see people talking about us, but we're just engaging. We're building that relationship. And now that we've built that relationship, essentially what's going to happen is BEL, lead. This is where I say, hey, would you like to download our ebook? Because if they've already seen a bunch of my content, they might not download my ebook, but they still like me. They might download something else. So now my marketing is not dependent on that ebook. The marketing is really dependent on my personality, giving good value. And it's better to give good value to people than just give them one shiny object. So then the last thing is as we're collecting leads and as we're going through, the report and everything else, it comes down to now buying. Like, for example, you may have listened to Tom in a podcast and thought that was interesting. And then all of a sudden you realize that you could watch him and that he's running some of these as ads. So now you watch 2 or 3 of those. That's the engage. And then all of a sudden there's an ad that's up there that Tom says, hey, download my 5-step toolkit. That's a way to become a lead. So you've seen the interviews, you become a lead. And let's just say hypothetically that you watch this interview right here and you're like, man, Tom, I listened to 3 podcasts. I've watched 7 interviews. But man, this interview with Curt really made a lot of sense and I wanted to dive in deeper. So let's just say that you would go to thebelt.live that you see right there for the link /celebration, right? If you go to thebelt.live /celebration, I have over 20 hours of free training inside of a free group that you can learn how to do all of this. There are 5,800 people with 6,000 people in the group. I am there to answer any questions. But again, so this is what I'm doing. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions here. But this is what I like to say is full open kimono. So I show you how to build belief, engagement, lead, and transact. I'm going to show you inside of the group exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to lead with content. I'm going to lead with value. And if you decide to do business with us, Tom would make a little bit of money from it too. But this is what Tom's doing by serving first and not running with an offer, which I think can really help out your audience a lot, Tom.
So first of all, I appreciate the heck out of that. So most folks listening are going to be familiar with lead and transact. So belief and engage, are those kind of happening simultaneously? Like, do you build the belief by engaging? How does belief come first?
Oh, this is so great. So let's talk about belief. We all have very specific beliefs that bind us to one another or repel us from one another. So if you get someone from Islam and Catholicism to sit and to talk, you're not going to convert either one of them because they have different beliefs. It doesn't mean that one's right or wrong. We just have beliefs that are styled around us. So we have to be able to connect with people based off their belief system. So for example, just to use the whole religion thing without getting into too much, right? Like there are arguments with Christians and Islam and going back and forth. Who's right or wrong? No one knows. No one was ever around that time thousands of years ago. It's just what we decide to believe in. So the thing is I'm not going to go up to someone who believes in Islam and to say, hey, you must believe this. Or I'm not going to go up to a Christian and say that same thing too, because I'm not going to alter their beliefs. So I want to align their belief system. So you talked about activism. I don't want to go protest and yell at somebody who doesn't align with me. I want to meet someone who's like, hey, I believe the same thing. And I bet if we join together in our beliefs, we can accomplish more. I want to work with people, not against people. So I want to target people where we believe the same, because there's already deep-seated beliefs that I am not going to change. I just want to make sure I'm reaching out to the right people. So belief is alignment. So when I say belief, I want you to think alignment. So if you want to talk about Islamophobia, for example, I want to align myself with people who are practicing inside of the faith of Islam. And I really want to talk to those people like, hey, how can we all work together? And that's what people say. They're like, oh yeah, I want to work together. That sounds great. Now we're all aligning ourselves to say engage. The next step of engagement, let's just say we're talking about Islamophobia, as you mentioned, right? Engage, maybe here are different articles that can help people. Here's some peaceful ways that we can demonstrate. Now the belief system is aligned with the action that you're taking. So when it comes time to ask for a donation or move forward, they already know, like, and trust you. So it's a lot easier. Instead of running an ad, hey, are you Islam? Do you want to donate? That's almost disrespectful, right? I want to build the relationship. I want to really help people in their belief systems to be aligned and help other people regroup together. So I'm going to bring up Facebook groups real quick. And this is a scary thing and a happy thing, Facebook groups. So Facebook loves Facebook groups. Again, I have a lot of free training inside of my group, thebelt.live/celebration. Again, thebelt.live/celebration, so you can see this. Here's the secret to Facebook groups. It aligns people's beliefs. Now, I'm going to be very direct here when I say this, and maybe it's a little controversial. So there's some people out there, and they believe that the earth is flat, and they're called, what are they called? Idiots. That's right. They're called idiots. No, they're not called flat earthers. They're called idiots. So what happens is there are some people that are like, no, flat earth's a real thing. And I'm like, okay, the idiots go stand over there. Now, the reason that the idiots are so prevalent, and please, if you're a flat earther, please be that fry cook from Chick-fil-A that tells me that gravity isn't real. Please. What happens is one of the reasons the flat earth movement has really taken off is because there are people inside of a Facebook group who say that they have authority, that say it loudly and they scream it. There's no facts to it. There's no science to it. There's no proof to it. But if you get enough people who are angry enough to believe that it's a conspiracy, people will believe everything. So I use the power of propaganda for good. I don't use it for idiots. And when you think about the flat earther movement, seriously, people will believe. And another one, 5G towers cause corona. Basically, where that came from is, remember, we used to have cell phones that were going to give us brain cancer, then no one gave us brain cancer. So then we had to figure something else. These stories are made up, and because they are fearful, scary, don't know if it's factual or not, but it does seem reasonable for something I can't explain, that's why they get taken off. So to go back, I want to align with someone's belief system, not be against it. I want to engage with them so we're believing the same thing, and then it becomes appropriate and easy to become a lead and transact.
So what I'm hearing is the belief part. Would that be then like the market research, like making sure that you're figuring out who are your people? It's not necessarily like an action. Then the engagement part is what you engage with, the research that you did.
So for example, it's like I have the belt method, and if I advertise the belt method, Facebook thinks I'm selling some fashion accessory. So if I just run a bunch of ads in the belt method, you'll literally see other ads of belt accessories in your feed, which just doesn't make any sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have, let's just say, a 30-minute interview that I had a friend of mine, Chris Mercer, do. Chris Mercer talks about Facebook analytics. If someone's going to watch 20 minutes of Facebook analytics, I'm pretty sure they're interested in Facebook ads. So that's where I know that I align the belief. So what I actually do, another little trick, I'll take this one video, I'll run it in 20 different audiences for $1 a day, because Facebook will find the right person at $1 a day for these 20 different. So $1 a day for each audience. So 20 different audiences, $1 a day, $20. Well, if I run a video to one interest for $1 a day, Facebook will find the right person at the right time who will actually watch that entire video for probably less than $1. You'll probably get multiple people to watch it, sometimes for less than $1. So I rather align myself and say, okay, the first time that my potential customer saw me was watching this video, not going to my website. They watched it for 20 minutes. I think that qualifies them, that we align the belief. Now let's put them in the middle of funnel, means they've already seen us once. Now they're going to see lots of different content, but I'm qualifying people based off their belief. So if we went back to Islamophobia, for example, I want to make sure, hey, do you believe this exists? Yeah, I think it's horrible. I want to fight against it. Great. Now we move to the engagement part. We start engaging people, building that relationship before we show them what action to take. This is the way that cults are actually built. Because you align your belief system with someone, you start to engage. The way a lot of cults work is, do you believe in this? Yes. Let's join a community. In that community, we're going to engage. We're going to work with one another. Now, if we really want to work with one another, we're going to start giving up your money. We're going to start giving up money. We're going to start cutting ties. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start building things, cutting ties. Now all of a sudden you're like, I believed in this religion. How am I living in a convent with 40 other people and this person has 27 wives and I'm not allowed to have a wife and I can't talk to my family? And how does that change so much? It's because of the indoctrination of the belief, and people want to hold on to that belief so much. Now that they're around, surrounded by people, they're going to believe that same thing that the other people believe. So I'm looking to gather a community that I influence what they're seeing and what they're hearing, and very ethically. And now it's much more likely that they're going to take my recommendation versus of me just selling a shiny product.
The tools themselves are neutral. It's how you use it. And what I'm hearing is
absolutely,
it's a lot of the negative folks that are using it, and a lot of us who are doing positive work, we don't know about this kind of stuff. And so that's why, Curt, I wanted you on here. Two quick questions before we sign off. And this is a big one, so I do apologize for asking it and saying, I know we don't have a lot of time on it, but I have a feeling we might have lost some folks, or some folks, disagreements might have come up in their mind. So I just want to clarify. And so I'm going to say what the disagreement is, and then I can ask the clarifying question. Is some folks are thinking, hey, but actually what we do want to do is, I don't want to just speak to the choir. I don't want to just speak to folks who think like me. I'm trying to change other people's beliefs. So, if I'm fighting racism, I want my stuff to get in front of the racist to change their mind. So how, there's that, but then we're talking about Facebook ads and marketing and building a movement that gives you the community, the resources to do those kind of things. So can you kind of just clarify on that? So
I'm going to go over a couple of things, and I'm going to kind of dive into history a little bit. It's going to have some ugly history, but it's true. Okay. One of the things that I remember, I come walking out of this concert at ACL every single year. There's over 80,000 people that are released at 10 o'clock at night that come out. And I'll never forget, there are always 5 people that are preaching out there. They have this ladder and they have this bullhorn and they're preaching, you will burn in hell, Jesus will save. And I'm like, there's 60,000 people here and you're going to intimidate, yell at, scream at, and that's the way that you want to align yourself with people. Then they hand out flyers, the flyers get thrown around. There's no good conversations that are going on there. All they're doing is getting a spectacle. And honestly, I look for the idiot every single year, again, no religion aside, and the way that he treats people. I'm like, this is stupid. What I'm looking to do is to slowly change the belief system of people. I want people who, if you watch, it's the Netflix special on how the president got elected.
Roger Stone one?
No, it's social. It's not Roger Stone. It's on Netflix. It's how President Trump got elected. Social. I'll think about it here in a minute. Here's the moral of the story. It only takes 88. So Trump was the first person to hire a marketing firm that broke out the numbers. Instead of aligning belief systems, Trump actually broke out the numbers of who were persuasive and indecisive. Found out that there's only 88,000 people, statistical math. There's only 88,000 people that need to be swayed their opinion just a little bit, and it will swing an entire presidential election. So what happens is you align the people that are closest to your belief system that can swing just a little bit, to help really broaden your message. And let me give you a perfect example. This is a dark place in history. Hitler never came out of World War I and said, we're going to kill a bunch of people, put them inside of ovens, put them in concentration camps, and kill half the world. No. He started by saying, we're going to get our pride back as Germany. We're going to rebuild Germany. We're going to, and step by step, and they started to introduce these things. Again, this is a very dark time in history. How do you get to a point where there's concentration camps in a neighborhood? In a neighborhood. He didn't come out and say it. How did it get this way? Because people bought into the belief system so long, they were so bought in, they looked over their shoulder, literally like, can't say anything now. How does it get that way? It's because people believe. So I don't go after the advocate. I want to go after someone sitting on the same side of the table, because our power is in numbers, changing the persuasive belief system. And now I can show up for a rally and really have a big deal. I don't want to advertise to racists. I want to advertise to all people who really get to know, love, and trust me. So when it comes time to do a rally, it's not 50 of me out there screaming, it's 500. Huge difference. And I know we're just about out of time, but I want to make that point. Huge difference.
Yeah. And so, just to clarify for folks listening on my perspective, we recognize we're two white guys giving advice on activism. And so we're not, or me personally, I don't want to speak for Curt, but I think we're in alignment. I'm not trying to tell anybody how to advocate for their own survival, for their people. What's happening here are tools to add to the toolbox that have historically worked. And Curt brought it home to build a movement so that when you do go speak truth to power, that there is, like which has happened with Black Lives Matter, and it's still happening, of course, is you have critical mass where there are so many people there that we actually start seeing the dial move. So,
and one quick note on that. Yeah. So Black Lives Matter has lots of different connotations, right? But it's the individual people that people really remember, because Black Lives Matter may take another political swing. But if you have good activism and people know who you are, maybe you were associated, I'm making this up, maybe you're associated with Black Lives Matter and they took a different political turn, and you take your following somewhere else for a different belief system, right? It's when people follow your beliefs and align your beliefs, it's huge, more powerful than just a single movement. So.
Well said. Okay, Curt, we want to summarize, and then I got one ritual. We always close with the same question. So let's review the links. So let's start off with, where folks, we didn't get a chance to go in the nitty gritty. I want y'all to go through Curt's trainings. Whether or not let's say you're at the end of this, you're like, I hate Tom, I hate Curt, but I love the belt. Then we won. So go learn this and use it to make the world a better place. Curt, where can folks, again, the belt.live/the celebration, right?
Just celebration. So just the belt.live /celebration. And it'll take you inside of a free group. It'll give you a free training. And essentially, you can ask me any questions that you want to in there. But if you just want to dip your toe in the water, if you're just interested or curious, this is the way that I'd like to engage with you and build a relationship and see if it's right for you.
And let me just say, y'all, this is not the type of free Facebook group where you get in there and you get Joe emailing you and adding you so that they can spam you, or people are posting.
Oh yeah, I'm very strict about the group. Yeah.
So there's been many times where in Curt's free group, I asked a question where he probably saved me from making huge mistakes with my clients, and vice versa, where he gave me a tool where I actually landed 5K, 10K clients. So in addition to the actual trainings you're actually going to get real Curt and other people in the group who are going to actually give you a lot of value. So I know that it's not just self-serving that, if you sign up for something, there's an affiliate part to it, but legitimately, even before that, the reason I brought Curt on here is because he's the best of the best. I want us, the other one we didn't get a chance to talk about is, can you shout out how people can access the Facebook ad account shutdown training that you recently did?
Oh yes, absolutely. So that is, you just go to the belt.live /account shutdown. So it's the belt.live. Let me double check and make sure that link is up, but it's the belt.live /account shutdown. If you've ever had an ad disapproved or an ad account shut down, you're definitely going to want to know why it's happening. So let me just double check here real quick. It's the belt.live /ad account shutdown. So again, it's what you're going to see right here is the belt.live. And then after the /, you're going to type in add account shutdown. Basically all one word, add account shutdown.
Is there any other links or places you want folks to follow you, say what's up, anything else like that before we conclude for the evening?
If you want, you can go ahead and connect with me over on my own Facebook page if you would like to go ahead and do that. Or the other thing as well, too, is once you're inside of the free group, we talked a lot about the summit, and I interviewed 65 different people inside of the summit. So essentially what happens is we'll give you a 7-day free pass. Just go to the link that we gave you before, like I said, thebelt.live/celebration, and we'll give you a 7-day free pass into there too. So I have lots of trainings and lots of ways to build a great relationship with you. And if you have a great message that can help the world, I'd love to be able to help. So Tom, thanks for having me. This has been great.
Of course. I've mentioned I love the nevertheless one. For folks who don't know what they want to do, right? They're like, I don't know what I want to be an entrepreneur. The woman who was selling like cups and like stuff like that online.
Rachel Rafay.
Yeah, that's another good one I liked. So those are some of my two faves that I want to suggest y'all check out. But the whole thing is absolutely amazing. You listen to those 60 interviews and you're going to be at the end of it like fired up, ready to go. And also maxed out on your credit card because you're on all the trainings.
Yeah, it's good. There's some good stuff in there.
Curt, you are one of the most generous people I know. Even before you stepped onto this interview, I already believe that. This only confirmed with you sharing an hour and a half of your time with someone that you only really know from us interacting in your group. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and share my gratitude with you. So thank you. I hope it comes back to you a millionfold. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Have an amazing day.
Oh, we got our closing ritual question. This is
yes.
Every single person. What would you like to invite people to do, to be, to consider, to think about, to engage with? What is your invitation?
One of my favorite things to do is when you wake up first thing in the morning is you have what I always tell people is the ability to choose. I choose every single morning to make this today great. I'm like, hey, one of the things I get to do today is create greatness. It's a story that we get to choose in our own ears. So when we wake up, we get a fresh new start every day. It's a story that you decide to tell yourself every day. So I wake up, look out my window, feel really grateful, think about the things that I'm really grateful for. And that's how I start my day. I don't start my day with a bunch of negative news, a bunch of negative emails. It's not who I surround myself with. And my life has become really a lot different from when I've had that set of attitudes. It seems like the opportunities fall in place. So if you're searching for opportunities, you're searching for some really big wins, start off in the morning with some gratitude first to ground yourself a little bit. It makes a huge difference as you run up through the rest of the day. Other people notice it as well too, in a very big way.
The invitation, it was a good summary of the energy that you brought to this entire thing. So once again, brother, just want to thank you so much for all the value you brought. And anything that myself or anyone listening, any way we can be of service, just let us know. So thank you, Curt.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Of course. And to all of those listening, as always, we're wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.